Have you ever walked away from a virtual interview wondering if you made the right impression? Virtual interviews, they can feel overwhelming from technical hiccups to knowing how to connect through a screen. It can all be a bit much, especially if you are new to online interviews. Well, welcome to the Prescription for Career Success mini podcast series. And today I am going to talk to you about how to ace virtual interviews in 2025. I'm Dr. Christy Taylor, career and executive coach, and the founder of Work Solutions LLC. Virtual interviews, they offer convenience for both candidates and employers. And although there's been a demand for us to return to the workplace and go back to that traditional pre-COVID 9 to 5 model, I think that virtual interviews are here to stay because they are a permanent fixture in really streamlining the recruiting process. And it's very convenient. So, because these are now a permanent fixture in recruiting, it is going to require different preparation compared to in person interviews. You have to pay attention to things like technology, body language, and every detail is going to matter in creating a strong professional online presence. I'm also going to go back to the fundamentals here and say you also want to pay attention to what you are posting on your social media and other platforms. Pay attention to that stuff because I guarantee you at some point, whether they do it during the interview or while or pre or post interview, they are going to Google you to see what pops up. But that is a topic for another day. I want to focus on first when preparing for virtual interviews that you focus on the environment. Start by setting up your professional interview space. It needs to be a quiet, well-lit area with minimal distractions and a clean background. Test your camera angle to ensure that your face is centered and well lit. Pay attention, especially if you have two screens. We've all done that where maybe we have two screens and the camera is on one screen and it just looks crazy. You want to test all of that stuff before you actually go into the interview to make sure that everything works. Use your headphones or a quality microphone to enhance sound clarity and eliminate background noise. I can't say this enough, but for virtual interviews, you always want to have a plan B, which is I always, if I'm doing a virtual interview for anything, even if it's a podcast interview, I always get their phone number because if something happens and we disconnect, I want to be able to call in. I want to be able to send an email to let you know, hey, that I'm still there. And there has been times where I've done even virtual interviews for a job that I'm pursuing, and we get cut off in the middle of the interview. And what I do is I simply just continue the interview by calling that person's line that they gave me. So always ask for a phone number if you can so that you can contact the individuals directly and make sure that they have yours because you want to have a backup plan. Now, one thing that I'm also going to tell you to pay attention to is pay attention to the actual atmosphere. Like when you set up this quiet space, pay attention to what is in the background. You want that space to be clean and clear and inviting. If you have the advantage of being able to do this in the office, that's always great. But one of the recommendations I'm going to give you is also to blur out your screen if you can. If you're using Zoom or some other type of software, blur the screen out or have a picture that kind of eliminates the background distractions. And I would just say have a plain picture. It doesn't need to be anything fancy or over the top. I would, if you can blur it out, that's the simplest way to do it because you just want the interviewer to be focused on what you are engaging them with. Now, the next thing that I'm going to say, and I kind of already touched on this, was testing your technology. Technology glitches, they're going to happen. It can really derail the whole experience. You might be making a great impression with that interview, but let's say your computer goes out. Have you ever experienced that where you're in the middle of an important presentation, then your computer decides to reset itself? It happens. And that's why I said earlier, you want to go ahead and get the person's phone number and email because if something happens, then you want to be able to address that quickly. And even when I go into some of these interviews or discussions, that's one of the things that I address up front. Hey, I just want to make sure that if we get disconnected or something happens, that I can give you a call or I can send you an email so that we can continue the discussion. Test your internet connections, cameras, microphones well before you go into that interview. Familiarize yourself with the video conferencing platform, things like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or another tool. Listen, this is something that people don't always think of. This is part of the process of you making an impression. If you say that I know how to use technology well, but you go into the interview and you don't know how to use some basic functions of Zoom or Microsoft Teams, that's going to say a lot to the person that's interviewing you. So familiarize yourself with those basic functions and know how to use those tools. Nobody says you have to be a technical expert, but you definitely don't want to be fumbling while in the middle of an interview, because I've seen people lose opportunities because of that. Now, I've already mentioned that you need to have a backup plan. You need to show the employer that you are proactive and tech savvy by, again, arriving early, having a backup plan if you do disconnect, and just making sure that things run as smoothly as possible, even if something were to happen. I know for me, if I'm interviewing you for a job and you come in to the discussion and you say, hey, before we get started, I just wanted to verify that I have a good email address or phone number for you, just in case we get disconnected. That tells me, one, that you're proactive. Even if you've asked me ahead of time, that person is proactive. They're going to quickly work to solve a problem, because, again, everything that you do in the process of that interview and your interaction with their recruiter or employer, that is giving a impression. The next thing I kind of want to point out here is mastering your on screen presence. We talk a lot about your personal brand, but virtual interviews, they are going to require that you have a heightened sense of awareness of your body language and delivery. You have to pay attention to that. I've been in interviews and experiences with people where they feel so laid back, they use curse words or language that's too casual. You don't want to do that. You need to sit up straight, maintain eye contact by looking at the camera, and smile naturally. Again, as part of your practice for this interview process, my thing is I'm going to highly recommend that you take some time to push the camera back. If you're just using your computer camera, push the computer back, push it forward, like get a good angle prior to you going into that interview. Use hand gestures sparingly to emphasize points, but avoid fidgeting. You need to speak clearly and at a steady pace to ensure your words are understood. And you need to project confidence and enthusiasm through tone and expression. One of the things I really love about virtual interviews is that you can share resources right then and there. It's like if you have this online portfolio, or you need to reshare your resume, or things that you want to put in front of them, you can just drop it in the chat, and then you can reshare it after the meeting is over. The other thing I love about virtual interviews is that you don't have to be ashamed to have notes. They cannot see your computer. So my recommendation is to use the sticky notes and have little notes attached to your computer with some of the key points you wanted to make, with some of the practice interview questions that you have. And of course, I'm going to say, use my signature method that I teach my clients called the P.A.C.E method. And so that is consisting of problem, action, conclusion, effect, evaluation, to be able to really tell these high impact stories about the work that you've done. Now, I'm going to add in a link for our mini course that we have that introduces you to the P.A.C.E method. But you being able to tell a story about what you've done is really going to be important to make a great impression. Now, the final thing that I want to say here is, once the interview is over, you want to do two things. When you get to the end of the interview, you still want to ask questions, ask some thoughtful questions. Virtual interviews, they are a two-way conversation. So again, don't be overly casual. Come with some prepared questions and thoughtful questions. This stuff that I'm telling you is stuff that you've heard before. But ask them about their culture, the roles, key priorities, or the company's goals for 2025. One question I would like to always throw out there to you, like you can use this for example: where do you see the individual in this position 6 months or a year from now? Because they will often ask you, right, what do you see yourself with this company 6 months or a year from now? But ask them, as it pertains to this role, what would you like to see within the first 90 days, 6 months, or a year from now? So if you didn't do any research, if you don't know, you can kind of hear me laughing here. If you didn't really do research and you just cannot come up with something to ask them that. I'm excited about being in this role. What is your vision for this role 90 days, 6 months, or a year from now? And let them give you some feedback. The last thing you want to do is, no matter how the interview went, when it's over, you want to send a thank you letter. After the interview, send a personalized thank you email within 24 hours. Mention the specific points discussed during the interview to reinforce your interest, and express gratitude and professionalism. Be on point. Be professional throughout the entire experience. Now, when it comes to acing virtual interviews in 2025, it's all about preparation, confidence, and making a connection even through the screen. Remember, pay attention to your background. Test your technology. You can get a free Zoom account and you can practice with that. Get a friend to jump on with you, or use FaceTime if you use that. Shoot, even use what you have. If you have Facebook Messenger, jump on and practice, because I'm telling you, practice is what's going to make perfect. Now, start again by refining your setup, practice your responses, showing all of your best self. Don't be overly casual simply because it is a virtual interview. Now, speaking of career success, I want you to join me on January 23rd, 2025 at 7 p.m. for my free seminar called Land Your Dream Job. I'm going to give you 10 strategies to help you elevate your career. I'm going to be here to answer any of your questions to help you jumpstart your career in 2025. To register, we have dropped the Zoom link in this post. I'm also going to drop the link for our mini course, as well as a link to connect with me directly if you want to schedule a free 15-minute appointment. But we're going to keep exploring these topics, talking about some of the most basic things that you need to do to jumpstart your career, because I kind of feel like, from the standpoint of a coach, that we are forgetting these fundamental basic skills, and this is what the Prescription for Career Success series is all about. So until tomorrow, or till next time, I don't forget to register for the webinar, and keep on practicing your interview prep and your strategies for being successful in these virtual job interviews. I'm Christy Taylor, signing off. Check us out on worksolutions.com for other great tips and information. Have a great day.